Hare Krishna, everyone, a very warm welcome back again. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pastacha Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we're continuing with our series on Lord Chaitanya's journey to Vrindavan, and this is part 5. At the end of part 4, we heard how Lord Chaitanya was just beginning his visit to the 12 forests of Vrindavan, and Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami actually reveals Mahaprabhu's mood as he traversed through these forests. He writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vrindavani Shtira Charan Nandayan Svava Lokanai Atmanam Cha Tad Alokad Goranga Parito Brahmat. He writes, the Lord traveled all over Vrindavan, pleasing all living entities, moving and non-moving by his glances, and taking personal pleasure in seeing everyone. In this way, Gauranga traveled in Braj. Nice insight. Fortunately, together our Shastras give us the exact itinerary of Lord Chaitanya's visit to Vrindavan. In other words, like a step-by-step list of the places he visited, and for the most part, what he did in those places. Perhaps in part because there were two definite witnesses, Balabadra Bhatacarya and the Brahmana Krishnadas, who we heard about in our last lecture. He was requested by Lord Chaitanya to show him the sacred tirthas of Vrindavan. Now, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 193, he refers to this Brahmana, actually Krishnadas. He writes, Vana Deki Bhari Yadi, Prabhura Mana Haila, Seta Brahmane Prabhu, Sangeta Laila. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to see the various forests of Vrindavan, he took the Brahmana with him. So this Brahmana is Krishnadas. So witnesses to the various places that the three of them went. So here's a list. Here's the itinerary of the places that Lord Chaitanya visited in order in which he visited them. Mathura, Madhuvan, Talavan, Kamudvan, Bahulavan, Kadiravan, Sheshashayi, Bandiravan, Bhadravan, Mahavan Gokul, Kamyavan, Nandagram, Varshana, Govardhan, then Radhakund and Shamakund. That was a special visit, we'll be speaking about that, and Vrindavan. That's the list, the itinerary. So now we'll go through the list and discuss whatever information is available. Some of it a lot, some of it less, but all relishable. And as we do so, we'll learn to appreciate Vrindavan more and more in hearing about Lord Chaitanya's love for Braj. Kaviraj Goswami gives us a hint, again, of Mahaprabhu's love for Vrindavan in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 17, verses 228 and 229. He writes, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was elsewhere, the very name of Vrindavan was sufficient to increase his ecstatic love. Now when he was actually traveling in the Vrindavan forest, his mind was absorbed in great ecstatic love day and night. He ate and bathed simply out of habit. So, one of the first places that Mahaprabhu visited, as we mentioned, was the forest of Madhuvan. Now, this forest of Madhuvan is glorified in Srila Narayan Bhatta Goswami's Braja Bhakti Vilas, chapter 10, verse 17, where he writes, Madhudhan samud bhutam sahasra guni artada Madhav Ashesha Ramya Namu Madhu Banaya Cha. He glorifies this for us. O forest of Madhuvan, you appeared by the desire of the demon Madhu. You are able to bestow all good qualities on those who visit you. O Madhuvan, O Lord Madhava, O beautiful one, I offer my respects to you. Now, this forest is famous for several reasons. One is because Krishna, who's famous as Madhusudhana, the killer of the Madhu demon, killed the Madhu demon in the Madhuvan forest. It has his name. This demon lived there, so it was known as Madhuvan forest. And Krishna killed this Madhu demon in that forest. So it's famous for that. Secondly, Madhuvan is famous because it's where Dhruva Maharaj meditated and performed austerities. We discussed that, I think, last year in our series on Vrindavan. And actually, I was reading recently that the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj's austerities in Madhuvan forest was one of Lord Chaitanya's favorites. He just really liked to hear that pastime. He would hear it, I was reading, and recite it again and again. In fact, I read that Caitanya Mahaprabhu told this pastime of Dhruva Maharaj in the Madhuvan forest to his, how could you say, aggrieved mother on the evening before he departed Navadvip to accept the renounced order of life. It was one of his favorite pastimes, actually, hearing about Dhruva in the forest. Now, the third reason that the Madhuvan forest is so famous is because the moment after Lord Caitanya took initiation from Ishvara Puri, his spiritual master, he was in so much ecstasy that he wanted to leave the world behind and simply retire to the Madhuvan forest. That was one of his sentiments immediately after getting the mantra from Ishvara Puri. He wanted to go to Vrindavan and retire in the Madhuvan forest. But actually, as he set out for Vrindavan to do that, to retire in the Madhuvan forest, it's written, he heard a celestial voice say, "Dear Lord, for now please return to your home in Navadvip. In the future, you shall certainly visit Madhuvan and enjoy many pastimes there." And many years later, when Lord Caitanya did go to Vrindavan, as we're discussing, that was the first place he visited, Madhuvan. It all ties in a transcendental way. Hare Krishna. Now, as we saw on the list, the next place that he visited, it's described, was the forest of Talavan, where he worshipped with great respect a deity of Lord Balaram, the killer of Dinakasura. And he bathed in a body of water called Vetra Ganga. The Talavan forest, of course, is where, Dinakasura was killed by Balaram, and there's a deity there. There was a deity when Mahaprabhu went there. So he worshipped that deity in the forest there with great respect. And then he bathed in this body of water called Vetra Ganga. Nice details. Now, from Talavan, Lord Caitanya proceeded to Kumudavan, which, if I remember correctly, is a very small forest with a circumference of only 1 kilometer. We discussed that forest 2 years ago. And as Lord Caitanya entered this very small but quaint Kumudavan, Krishnadas took Mahaprabhu to a kund there. It's called Kumuda Kund, where he related the pastime of a transcendental quarrel. It's called Kondala, a transcendental quarrel, Kondala, that took place in Krishna Lila 5,000 years ago there. And he said to Mahaprabhu, that is why this place is also named Kondaliya, a place of quarrel. Actually, it's a really wonderful pastime, and I think I'll just take a minute and share it with you, because Mahaprabhu heard it from Krishnadas. So that pastime is as follows, that one time Lord Balaram asked the cowherd boys to pair off for stick fighting and arm wrestling, to split into two teams essentially. And while Mandali, Bhadra, and Subhadra Gopa, one of the cowherd boys, sided with Krishna and fought with Balaram, Sridham and Shubal sided with Balaram, and their side fought with Krishna's side. So we have two teams here. However, a dispute soon broke out over the rules of the game, the fighting, and ultimately who the winner was. And so the acharyas described there was this huge quarrel between Krishna's side with all his, cowherd boys, and Balaram's side with all his cowherd boys. And it took place, this quarrel took place in the fields and gardens around Kumudakund. So as they argued and yelled, the noise filled the forest. Just made this huge ruckus, lots of noise, and attracted all sorts of creatures to see what the commotion was all about. And one acharya comments here that it's interesting. Unlike arguments amongst conditioned souls, which are based on frustrated desires and thus repulse the heart, the arguments amongst the cowherd boys arise from love, transcendental love, and attract everyone. The love underlying the Gopa's quarrel inspired the same love within the forest creatures who were watching. And before long, the insects, the birds, and animals had grouped off in different sides to also argue. And the Acharya says, though unsure what they should be arguing about. These are kind of taking the same mood as Krishna and Balaram, the cowherd boys, arguing. But they were unsure about what to argue about. So this is transcendental. Somehow or other it increases the love for Krishna and Balaram and all the cowherd boys together, and all the animals. This is Krishna consciousness. So next, Krishna Das took Mahaprabhu to the forest of Bahulavan, another forest that we lectured extensively on before. And while Caitanya Mahaprabhu was there, he recalled how the cowherd boys brought their cows to that forest with Krishna, because he was Krishna, he is Krishna, and rested while the animals drank from Bahulavan's clear lakes with its very sweet waters. And as Mahaprabhu was sitting there in that forest, he was thinking that how in 5,000 years ago, the cows grazing in Bahulavan were spontaneously attracted to him. So in the same way, at this particular moment, the cows in the Bahulavan forest saw Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and they surrounded him, and they licked his body and gazed at him with great affection. So similar pastime, 5,000 years ago and 500 years ago. And the acharyas write that absorbed in ecstatic love, Mahaprabhu hugged these forest cows who were coming around him. And as he did so, they pressed closer and closer and closer to him. Just as Nanda Maharaj's cows had pressed around Krishna thousands of years ago. And as Lord Chaitanya walked through the groves of Bahulavan, forest animals, other forest animals like deers and rabbits, approached him without fear. And birds, like doves and cuckoos, circled overhead. And as Lord Chaitanya walked past the trees in this forest, they just spontaneously, boom, they burst into bloom, showering him with all sorts of beautiful flower petals. And one acharya writes that the entire forest echoed with cries of Jai, Jai, Jai. The whole forest came alive because the Lord's passing through, the Lord of their hearts. And it's described that the fortunate people who were present, who witnessed this, who witnessed Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Bahulavan concluded as follows. This sannyasi must be a fair-complexioned Sri Krishna. And so it was. This sannyasi must be a fair-complexioned Sri Krishna. Because I remember the pastime of Krishna there 5,000 years ago, and seeing Mahaprabhu go through the forest and getting the same reaction from the animals. Oh, this sannyasi must be a fair-complexioned Sri Krishna. So we'll move on. Next, Krishnadas took Mahaprabhu to the forest of Kadiravan, where Krishnadas narrated a wonderful pastime that took place there, again when Krishna was present in Vrindavan. And that pastime is as follows. One day, Krishnadas said, Srimati Radharani and her friends were passing through Kadiravan on their way to sell yogurt in a market near Nandagram. But in reality, the acharyas say, they were actually hoping to meet Krishna somewhere along the way. That's just an excuse. They're going to sell their milk products, but really in their heart of hearts, they're just hoping Krishna will stop and even tax them. They don't care, as long as they can get his association. Now that day, Krishna was tending his cows in the Kadiravan forest with his friends. And when he got the news that Radharani and her milkmaids were passing by, he decided to play a joke on them. So he called all the boys and he said, look, all you boys hide in the forest here while I stand on the path. And when the gopis arrive, you can make a tumultuous sound like a monster approaching. And Sri Radha will get the surprise of her life. So the boys loved the idea. They like to tease the girls. So they all at once just disappeared into the surrounding woods. And just then, Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani, and her girlfriends came walking down the path by the arrangement of Yogamaya Purnamasi. It's described as Krishna stood there nonchalantly in the middle of the walkway, pretending not to see the gopis. But just as the girls passed by Krishna, as per the plan, the cowherd boys who were hiding suddenly made, how is it described, terrible wailing sounds, like hobgoblins or ghosts. Hobgoblins or ghosts, it's described. So Sri Radha was so startled by this noise that she threw herself on Krishna, burying her lotus-faced in his chest and begging him for protection. At the same time, the other gopis just turned around and ran away, while Krishna pretended to be surprised and tried to comfort Srimati Radharani with sweet words. But suddenly, Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani, she became confused, thinking, how can Krishna act like this in the midst of danger? This is not like him. If there's a demon, he's a demon killer. Why isn't he killing the demon? And she put two and two together and she realized this was all a ruse, it was all a trick, a play of Krishna and the cowherd boys. And instead of getting angry, her loving mood emerged in this pastime, and she smiled and forgot all other things it's described besides Krishna's company. She forgot everything else besides Krishna's company. Now, when Caitanya Mahaprabhu heard from Krishnadas that Radha and Krishna had enjoyed this loving pastime at Kadiravan, he explained, excellent, most excellent. So the Acharya is right. Mahaprabhu was just in ecstasy. He said, excellent, most excellent. So, after taking Mahaprabhu through a few other forests, Krishnadas brought him to Kamyavan. I think we had 4 lectures on Kamyavan, wasn't it? And there, Lord Chaitanya smiled as Krishnadas related a pastime of Durvasa Muni, that took place in Kamyavan in Satya Yuga, but which concluded with the mercy of Lord Chaitanya in Kali Yuga. So how's that? He related a pastime of Durvasa Muni that took place in Kamyavan in Satya Yuga, but the pastime concluded with the mercy of Lord Chaitanya in Kali Yuga. So what's going on here? Well, listen carefully. To begin with, in Prema Vivarta, chapter 15 by Jagadananda Pandit, it's mentioned that Kamyavan was the favorite place of Durvasa Muni. That illustrious Vaishnava author, he writes, in ages long past, the great Durvasa Muni would come to Kamyavan to reflect on the pastimes of Krishna that he had performed in a previous day of Brahma, as well as those he would perform in the present times. So there's reference there to Durvasa Muni going to Kamyavan. So on one of Durvasa Muni's visits to Kamyavan, in Satya Yuga, he was taking a nap one afternoon while some boys played nearby. And, boys will be boys, that when they saw Durvasa Muni's matted locks, these unfortunate boys decided to play a joke on him. Be careful. So one boy took a knife and he cut off some of the locks of Durvasa Muni's hair. Now this was particularly offensive because yogis, they keep their tejas, they keep their spiritual power in their hair. That's why you see so many yogis. I see so many yogis here in India, very long hair. They'll tie it on top of their head, and when they let it out or let it down to bathe, it goes many, many meters. They keep their tejas in their hair. So when Durvasa Muni woke up and saw those boys playing with a strand of his hair, he became very angry. And he cursed the boy who had cut his locks, saying, "You little rascal, since you like to crawl around and cause mischief," because he crawled up and cut his hair, "since you like to crawl around and cause mischief, then you become a crocodile and crawl around on the ground for one kalpa." Means Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. It's a kalpa. So he cursed him. You become a crocodile, crawl around for a kalpa. So at that, the boy became terrified, and he also expressed remorse, and he begged for mercy. So taking compassion on him, Durvasa Muni said, "All right, I can't retract the curse. Once a Brahmana utters a curse, he can't retract it, but he can make it a little easier." So Durvasa Muni said, "All right, this is Satya Yuga. But when the Lord of this forest, Krishna, appears in Navadvip, Mayapur, in Bengal, in Kali Yuga, as the son of Mother Sachi, he will deliver you. How? By Nam Sankirtan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare." Now that's a long time. He's saying this, in Satya Yuga, and saying you'll get delivered in Kali Yuga by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The boy had to wait till Kali Yuga to get the blessings of Krishna in his form as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Just consider how fortunate we are to get the same mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu now in one lifetime. We don't have to wait a kalpa. We're just so fortunate by Prabhupada's mercy. So the boy immediately assumed the form of a crocodile, and he took up residence in a lake in Godrumdweep in Mayapur. And he waited 4 yugas. And what did he do all that time? Well, what do crocodiles do? They sometimes terrorize people and animals. So everyone was afraid of this crocodile through all that time. But then, when Mahaprabhu finally appeared, as a little boy, Nimai, in his youth, understanding the situation because he's a beginner swarat. He's all-pervading and he's all-knowing. One day, he took his friends down to Godrundweep and purposefully played near that lake where this big crocodile was. And seeing this, some older men who were nearby, herding cows, they said to Nimai, "Hey, young man, you go away. There's a big crocodile in this lake. It's a very dangerous place. You go home." But Nimai, understanding how he had to fulfill the words of his devotee, Durvasa Muni, he just smiled and said, "Watch this." And going down to the shore of the lake, he cupped his hands to his mouth and he chanted very loudly, "Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare." Now we all know when a pure devotee chants, something miraculous happens. All of us members of ISKCON, we're being delivered by Prabhupada's chanting and by his instructions to chant Hare Krishna. It's miraculous. But when the Lord himself chants, we can hardly imagine what happens. So then right there before everyone's eyes, this ferocious crocodile crawled out of the water and put his nose on the feet of little Nimai, soon to be Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Within moments, that crocodile assumed his original spiritual form and ascended to Goloka Vrindavan. Crocodile came out, put his nose on the feet of Nimai, and he was liberated from that horrible condition. In Satyayuga, he was a little boy who cut the locks of Durvasa Muni, great offense, was cursed, but now just in the form of the crocodile, putting his nose on the feet of Nimai, he assumed his original spiritual form, and before everyone present, ascended to Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual sky. So it seems incredible, but no less incredible is Lord Chaitanya's mercy on us through his most merciful emissary, Srila Balabadra. We can receive the same grace, the same mercy of going back home, back to Godhead, through Mahaprabhu's emissary, Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So we owe everything to Srila Prabhupada. And there's one beautiful poem which is very dear to my heart, which was composed by my dear godbrother Patita Pavan in the very beginning of the movement in 1969, I believe, which glorifies Srila Prabhupada as our deliverer from our crocodile-like existence in this material world. He wrote, Patita Pavana, "O Paramahansa of the nectar lake, did you your own to love forsake, leaving his sweet and fragrant lotus breast, to come to this world of birth and death? And is this a helping hand you lend, while in this world of matter you transcend? I am perplexed, please let it be known, have you come to take me home? My feeble memory cannot recall, did I once in anger slip and fall? If there is truth, then tell me where, from this I'll turn and go with you there. Tell me please of life's true goal, so I may cleanse dust from my soul, and from this humbly let me start, to nourish the spark of life within my heart. Your blessings I crave, as now I see, your love can teach infinity, and of the mercy that therein lies, for this my twice-born soul does cry. So tell me please of Vrindavan, and the blue boy, yes, the gentle one, known as Krishna, Devaki's son, to his abode I long to run. Krishna, yes, that is the name, and the reason why to your feet I came. I pray I'll hear Krishna wherever I go, with sound of cymbals and Hari Bol. Now tell me please of his jeweled throne, and how he dances with his gopis alone. Oh, and how his flute notes fill the air. Tell me this in loving prayer. I see in nectar that you swim, while herding Surabi cows along with him. Please tell the beauty of his lotus flowers, and his strength and fame and mystic powers, and of devotees whom he holds dear, in Vaikuntha his abode, where there is no fear. Do tell, are his features like the moon? Tell it sweetly, lest I swoon. Now unto your lotus feet I will cling, lest I be whipped by Maya's sting. Even the dust of your grace's feet, as I bow down, taste nectar sweet. O Paramahansa of our land, I see in glory you do stand. 10,000 times a day I beg, let me thank you for your helping hand. Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Very, very beautiful poem composed by Petit Pavanadas, helping us understand where the mercy comes from, where we're getting the mercy of our previous acharyas, we're getting the mercy of the Panchatattva, and Sri Shivada Shrama Sundar, all by Srila Prabhupada's grace. Thank you, Srila Prabhupada. So, we haven't visited all of Vrindavan, where Mahaprabhu visited, but we'll continue in our next lecture. I think we have maybe 2 more lectures in this series of Lord Chaitanya's journey from Puri to Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thank you, everybody. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Jagannath Puri Dham ki, Jagannath Subhadra Balarama ki, Shri Mayapur Dham ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe Shyam. Hare Krishna.